Good morning, all. So today we're finally doing our first live chat for the O'Brien Dennis initiative, and we're doing our live chat. And my name is O'Brien Dennis. I'm a author and an advocate for sexual violence. And my first guest today is my father. And for the most part, I've been very private in regarding my family and who I decide to bring in the public arena. But I'm beyond excited and elated that I have the opportunity today to interview my father and have a chit, 1 hour chat with him about my story and the work that I'm doing. And Daddy, I must say, I'm very, very thankful for you to come and do this on my behalf. It's not easy to have this level of conversation
with me.
and yes, and as I said to you last night, this isn't about showing you out or putting you out in a bad light. It's just as a son having a conversation with a father about something that's really important, not just to me, but to a whole lot of people on the outside. And I think as a father, it's going to send a really strong message about what really goes on and what really needs to happen. So before we actually start the chat between myself and my father, I need to actually go in and talk about why we're doing the live chats and how we came up with this concept. So the O'Brien Dennis Foundation, not foundation, sorry, initiative, we actually have a conversational group. We usually meet for 8 weeks at a specific location, and for the most part, there's usually 8 or 10 guys who are present for the conversational group. We have not had any for this year. We do have our Facebook conversation chat group, which is open to the general public, and I decided to just take it up a whole notch and decided to do a live chat. And the whole concept is to have conversations with not only survivors, but in this regards, I'm having a conversation with my father, and we're going to have a clinician come on board. We're going to focus less on the trauma and focus more on the recovery process and how each individual was able to move from the traumatic experience into recovery and actually make something worthwhile of themselves. So my purpose first in doing the conversation is to allow the men who are survivors to come on and tell their story in their own authentic voice. I've asked each of the men who are going to come on board to be a part of the conversation to focus less on the actual abuse, how it happened, the whole gamut that comes with the whole trauma. Reason for that is too often we're consumed with the trauma and the graphic nature of the abuse. I think it's very important for people to move beyond that and really have a better understanding of what these men are going through. It's not easy. It takes a lot of vulnerability. It takes a lot of gut. It takes a lot of courage to really come on publicly and tell the story. So that was my intention. My purpose now is to allow you, the audience, people who are watching, who are viewing what we're doing, to look at male sex abuse from a whole different perspective. Too often we have this visual image in our head that they look this way, that they're going through a great level of depression, some are alcoholics, some are drug addicts, and the list of guys who are coming on are ranging from, I think, 21 to 50. These are all men in their rights who are survivors and who have made something worthwhile for themselves. So, regarding the organization, we recently launched our second photo exhibition at the Schomburg in April of this year, and that was a huge success. And outside of the photos exhibition and the conversation group that we have, myself and Dr. Kim Arrington co-wrote a training manual which is called Understanding Childhood Sexual Abuse. And The reason for creating the training manual was we realized that too often parents, caregivers, clinicians, and social workers were often struggling in actually identifying the signs of childhood sexual trauma. I have been involved in social services for roughly about 10 years. And in my 10 years working in this profession, working directly with kids, I realized that my staff, and I'm going to use my staff as an example, as a guinea pig in doing the actual research on the ground behind this. There were several occasions where my staff had gone into home and there were things going on. However, they did not see the actual physical signs of what's going on with the kids. There are times when the kids did talk, did express certain behavioral patterns, and they didn't fully understand what was really going on and they didn't know how to ask the right questions. So the concept behind the training manual was to teach social workers, clinicians, and to a greater extent, foster parents and parents who are interested in how to really identify the signs of childhood sexual trauma. The training manual is divided into three different sections. The first section literally focuses on the theoretical aspect of this whole idea of what sexual trauma is. We decided to introduce apologize for this. We decided to introduce the A-score, which talks about the human lifespan depending on the varied level of trauma that each individual person have gone through. And each person who attends one of our training actually get the quiz and get an opportunity to really own into the 10 questions that the A-score really asks. And myself and Dr. Ireton decided that it was very important to take the training from a personal standpoint because too often people don't understand or realize what trauma looks like. Every single person on the planet Earth have experienced some level of trauma. Some have just experienced much more than others. But when it comes down to trauma, under no circumstances can we ever try to normalize it, dim it, or make it seem as if it doesn't have a severe impact on us as human beings. The second section of the training manual actually deals with the hard data, the actual information that tells you what's really going on with kids and the empirical studies that has been conducted. And it actually goes in and talk about the actual signs. So as a parent, as a caregiver, as a social worker, as a clinician, if you were to go into a home or have a one-on-one conversation with a child and the child expresses certain behavioral patterns, or as a worker working directly with a kid, you're going into the home, working in the field, and you're seeing certain behavioral patterns, you're able to now say, based on the information that you're going to get from the training manual, you're going to now start asking probing questions. I know that I have to make, not because you're going to see certain signs, and I'm not going to some of them. Bedwetting is one very common one. So not because a child bedwets at 7, 8, 9, or even as a teenager, it doesn't necessarily mean that they've experienced some level of sexual trauma. However, as a worker, going into the home, as a clinician, as a caregiver, it's very important to ask questions. What's really going on? Because there's a root to all that's going on. The third section, which I'm the one who decided to put more emphasis on the third section of training manual, which is prevention. Currently, prevention is left up to a child, and we all have to be logical and practical. There's no way a 5-year-old child can actually have the cognitive skills in terms of protecting themselves from someone. And the irony I often find when it comes down to prevention with kids is we tell kids that it is very important for them to listen to their elders. So a caregiver will leave a child in the care of a older trusted family member, a trusted neighbor, a trusted friend. So in the back of the child's mind, mom and dad has asked someone in the neighborhood, family, neighbor or friend, to be in charge of me, to take care of me until they return from work or wherever they're gone. And I'm expected to be respectful
these individuals. Yet it is the same person who I'm being told to be respectful to listen to, is now going to violate my personal space and take advantage of me. So it's very difficult and challenging for kids oftentimes to strike a balance. And oftentimes when I do these trainings and people ask, so why is it the kids allow it to happen for such a very long time, and they don't tell their parents, and they're having somewhat of a difficulty in even want to say something? The simple answer is trust. Without a level of trust, childhood sexual trauma will never ever happen. First, the child have to instill a level of trust within their abuser. Without that trust factor and trust component, it's never ever going to happen. So my hope in creating the training manual along with Dr. Arrington is to actually go into organizations and have one-on-one conversation with groups of social workers and clinicians, allow them to take a more ecological approach when dealing with child sexual trauma. And hopefully, by doing these live chats, we will be doing for the next 8 weeks, starting today and running at 11 o'clock every Saturday from now until next month. We're hoping that we're going to spark up a greater conversation about what really happens. I've decided not to focus the camera on my story because so often I'm the one that put myself on the outside and allow myself to become overly vulnerable in having this conversation. And as I've said to my board members, this isn't about me. I've been very fortunate and very blessed that I'm more than just a survivor. I'm very thankful for the experience for where I'm at today. And people always say to me, why is it you're thankful for the experience? I'm not thankful for the abuse. I'm simply thankful for all the things that I've done from when the abuse occurred to where I'm at right now, because I've owned the skills in terms of how to manage myself as a person. As a kid growing up, my grandmother would drill to me Matthew 5 verses 16, and it says, "Let your life shine so bright before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father." And I must say that looking at it right now, I'm using the light that has been eternally shined within me to not only tell my story, but to use myself as a tool to allow other men who have gone through what I've gone through an opportunity to tell their story in their own authentic voice. And hopefully, some young man, some older gentleman will see the story and the conversation that we're having and realize that they're not alone. And in the process of watching us being so open and so candid and being overly vulnerable, then they can say, you know what, if they can do it, we can do it too. So there's a book which is my guiding tool to doing all of this. And my best friend gave this to me for my birthday last year. It's called Daring Greatly by Dr. Brinny Brown. She's literally my guru when it comes down to shame and vulnerability. And our live group that we have, which is the private conversational group that we have, we've used Daring Greatly as a resource guide in having conversation with the group in terms of how, as men, we deal with the shame that we've dealt with, the sexual trauma, and how we allow ourselves to become openly vulnerable in telling the story. So, Daddy,
Yes, sir.
this is our time.
Over time.
Yeah.
Let me
So,
adjust myself here for over time.
so as I said to you, it's just a regular conversation, not much different from what we had last night. And it's not about going back in the past, trying to figure where you were when my trauma occurred and why you didn't do what you needed to do. So let me first introduce my father. I met my father for the first time, well, in terms of my recollection, I was 19 years old, and I came to New York for the summer, and my father and my brother were just a couple of months apart, came by the house that my mom and I were staying, and believe me, it was the best feeling I guess, is sliced bread for me to have. And one intriguing thing that occurred in terms of our relationship is, as a child growing up, my mom has never, ever to this day, ever once said any bad thing about my father. So unlike some kids where their father didn't play a integral role in their life, the mother oftentimes have something negative to say and make it seem as if the father is worthless, well in Jamaican colonial term, worthless or just didn't do what they need to do. I will give my mom a lot of credit because she never on no occasion, whether or not she was feeling angry or upset or felt like she needed his support or not, she never once made any negative comments. So as a result of that, I grew up having this unconditional love for my father. And I was more excited and elated when he came up to the house, met my brother that I've always heard about. So it isn't one of those father-son relationships where when I met him, he was a strange person and I was trying to figure out what's up or trying to ask all these questions for why is it you weren't. It was me just walking in open-endedly and just embracing and accepting my father for who he is.
You hear my name
Oh yes, oh yes. So for
in movies and what?
for those who are listening and
And watching, the world know me for the most part publicly and professionally as O'Brien Dennis, and there's a reason for that. I really wanted to protect my family's name when I started doing this advocacy work about 12, 13 years ago, and I didn't want my last name, which is Tyson, to be publicly out there to make a link to my family. So all I did was I switched my names around. So my name is Dennis O'Brien Tyson Jr., which is his senior. And all I did was I switched the names around. And ironically enough, O'Brien Dennis. So O'Brien and Dennis is British and O'Brien, Obrien, is Irish.
Irish, yeah.
So oftentimes when I go out and even without seeing my face and people hear O'Brien Dennis, they're often shocked when they see a black person. And I've even been in an interview before and someone said, I'm trying to get to O'Brien Dennis, and I hold my hand. He said, no, I'm looking for O'Brien Dennis. And I said, that's me. And in having conversation with a guy, he said, I was actually looking for a white guy. But we're both black Jamaicans, right?
so all right. So the first question is, as a parent, as a father, how important do you think it is to have conversation with boys about inappropriate and appropriate touches?
Well, I think it's highly important to discuss these issues with the boys. Um, it is wrong for young boys to be molested by the seniors. And when the parent find out that these things are happening, they should step in and take action. So
traditional, what we tend to do is we tend to, from a social perspective, we tend to put more focus and emphasis on the conversation we have with girls in terms of appropriate and inappropriate touches.
mm-hmm.
So it's very important for parents and guardians to understand that. So in essence, there are times, and we have to be as open and candid as we can when it comes down to these conversations.
Mm-hmm.
There are times when kids will lie.
Sure.
And it's a normal childhood behavior.
Manufacture a story for whatever.
Sometimes kids tell the fib just because they're trying to get something, get a toy, get a sweet, or get a treat. And they realize that if they're trying to get the treat from this specific adult,
mm-hmm.
it is best to probably just tell a lie, to tell a story, to just get that person in trouble, to get their way. Get that. However, no matter what, under no circumstances, it is best to listen to the child first.
Exactly.
The mistake that parents tend to make without indirectly understanding what they're doing, by not believing the child the first time, if the abuse is actually going on within the home setting, it now prevents the child from wanting to come forward again.
And why the matter is getting worse
Yes.
and worse.
And what parents need to understand that there are many kids that will live in that box, in that barless prison for a very, very long time, being very, very silent, not knowing what to do, out of fear.
Mm-hmm.
And it is important that parents foster and develop that level of trust from an early stage in the child developmental process. So the manual focus on parents and how important parents need to really own into their own responsibility. So, as a clinician, as a social worker, oftentimes when issues of sexual trauma pops up with families and they're coming into us, having conversation with us, and the state has been called in and the police is involved, and the parent knows for a fact the abuse did happen, it did occur, there's no if or no but, it happened. What I've observed over the years is parents tend to take a personal responsibility from the inside. That I was a bad parent, it's my fault, I didn't do what I need to do. Do you believe that parents need to take some responsibility for the child's abuse?
Yes, if you're totally aware of what is going on, and sometimes could be happening right on your nose hole, right on your roof. So I believe that parents should take some full responsibility when those things are taking place right under your eyes.
And you're saying the parents need to take full responsibility because of the mere fact that it's happening under their watch.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something that is missing or lacking within the home environment that, one, has it allowed the child to not be open and candid in telling the parent about what is going on, and two, for the abuse to actually go on. And as I made mention before, the actual signs of child with sexual trauma. So what really go on is the parents are in the home and for whatever reason, and the thing that I'm trying for parents to really understand, when we're saying taking responsibility, there's a very thin line between taking responsibility and blaming the parents. And people oftentimes marry those two words together. I cannot blame my mother for what the person did to me when I was 5 years old and between 14 and 16. What I can say to her that she needs to do is, there were visual signs. I acted out, I did a lot of stuff in the home. She should have owned in on my behavioral changes and taken more responsibility for what's going on. It is a lack thereof of asking the question that allowed things have escalated to where it was. So that's it. So it's not saying that you're putting blame,
right,
because you can't
and
blame.
then again, the parents sometimes think that this is just total denial.
Yeah.
Is it from a cultural standpoint?
Oftentimes it's a cultural thing, especially within the black community. We don't want to take responsibilities, especially within our own communities, that this is actually going on within our household. And we have to look at it from a social, religious, and pure economical standpoint, because black parents, black families struggle a whole lot. And this is not a race card I'm trying to put out.
And then again, the geography, United States to Jamaica is two different places.
Oh yes.
So even though we're all black, but we have our own cultural belief. This doesn't exist at all.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
It doesn't exist. I believe that from an American standpoint, it will be easily digested by the parent. But from Jamaica, we're somewhat kind of a different culture.
And not only just digest it, there's multiple resources that both parent and the child can get here versus back home in Jamaica. It's the one source of resource to get some help or to get some comfort or to have that dialogue is to go to church. And whilst I'm not dumbing down on church by any means whatsoever, saying that church is the place to go to find that comfort and solace, sometimes that's where the kids often gets abused also.
The church.
Yes, so it may not be the first place to go.
That's why it should be trusted in the Bible.
I'm going to take something from Dr. Brené Brown from Daring Greatly, and ask you about forgiveness. So how important do you think is forgiveness? Two standpoints. From the parent to first forgive themselves for believing that is their fault, and two, for the child to get to a point where they can forgive their parent for really not doing the thing that they should have been doing.
Yeah, that's a simple answer. Just like the man in my shirt would say, I believe in forgiveness. Yeah, I believe that both sides should be able to forgive each other, and move on. You know, I don't even know if I should really go that far, but once upon a time, you know, when certain things was discovered about young Tyson here, it sort of drifted us apart. And I think he faced the same with his mother too. But I came to grips with reality, and I put it back together just where it belongs. So that's one of the forgiveness from my standpoint. And, you know, you have embraced me back into your life, meaning that you have forgiven me.
It's so one of the lessons I've learned from forgiveness is in terms of dealing with my own personal trauma, I had to first forgive myself for believing that I as a child did something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And it took a very, very long time for me to realize that there's no way as a 5-year-old boy I would have allowed someone to do the things that they did. And between 14 and 16 when it happened, I knew for a fact, looking back, that I did not willingly, purposely put myself in harm's way for the things that happened. So it took a while for me to forgive myself for believing that I was responsible for all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I've now gotten to the point where I have to put full responsibility on my perpetrators. No, after forgiving myself, I got to a point where I forgave them for doing what they did. Because it makes no sense for me to have spent all of my time process consume them as an individual and what they did to me. Because over the years, it robbed me of my own personal happiness. I remember having a conversation with you about how often I used to drink. I started drinking at age 8, and by the time I got to 24, my liver was completely discharged. I was drinking too much. So, in terms of even forgiving the parents, I guess for me, compared to so many others, it's unique and different because not only have I gone out and got education, got a formal training, and I've been involved in social services for roughly 10 years. I've gotten a skill set and fully understand how important it is to forgive the parents and have that dialogue. And regarding our relationship, I remember last year you spent some time with me, and you said to me that you want to have a one-on-one conversation, and you came in the kitchen and I was interjecting and said, no, this is my time to have that one-on-one conversation with you. And it's that turning point in the relationship where I saw that level of vulnerability between the both of us, where you sat down and had a very candid conversation. I got to see your side of the story, and it was an honest, genuine conversation, and the forgiveness came very, very easily.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, I only have one father. They may have been substitutes along the way, but it can only be one.
Exactly.
No matter what we do.
Exactly.
And it takes a great level of pride. It takes a great level of courage. It takes a great level of manliness to really have that one-on-one conversation, face-to-face. And I really, really appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. It really, it made me as an adult and as a male look at myself differently. And it's these conversations that we have, these life-changing experiences that I really want to share to the world. Because if both of us can get to where we're at, so many people can do just the same.
Exactly.
And let me see, what was the last question? So we're wrapping up on time. So for the most part, I don't really have much conversation with you on a daily basis in terms of what I do.
Mm-hmm.
But you heard in the beginning of the segment, I went in and talked about what the organization is all about and what I do. So I guess it's the point where I start to plug in, getting some funding and getting some money, because we don't have anything and everything is coming from my pocket. And I have to remind not only my friends but those who have been following me for a very, very long time. I gave up my job recently to do this full time. So there's no additional source of income coming from the outside.
And don't forget to remind me to make my contribution.
Oh yes, please. And the organization strive and survive only on donation that people give to us. We're having our major fundraiser next month. It's going to be on August 26th. It's going to be right here in my backyard. And not only is it going to be a fundraiser, we're going to have an award giveaway where we're going to acknowledge individuals and organizations who have really given a tremendous amount of support to the organization in over, I think, 8 or 9 years in existence. And I realize it's very important for us to really give back and allow people to realize what appreciative we are. Because I, as an individual, could not have done this by myself. My board members, which I'm very grateful and thankful for each individual on the board, and kudos to all of you who have tirelessly gone above and beyond, and for those who have been here from the get-go. And I'm going to just publicly highlight Courtney Graham, who's been my right hand. And for those who don't fully understand everything that I've been doing over all these years, there has been one person who's been in the background in the shadows, and that has been Courtney. So it's not just me. Durrell Knight, who should also be coming and doing a part of this segment. Durrell has been with us from the get-go. He's been an elder, a father figure, a great strength of support. So in the African American black culture, we talk about it takes a village to raise a child. It really took a village to get us to where we are. So I'm really thankful. So my question for you in closing, Daddy, what do you think of the work that I'm doing and how important it is?
Well, I think you're doing a good job. Enlightening the world around us, what goes on. Don't look down on people. And I think you're taking the point right out there. That we're all here and we're all equal, and we stand equal right in the eyes of God. So whoever wants to see it their way, they have their own right, but at the same time, stretch out your arm and embrace.
One thing I'm going to say in closing. We've been live for 30 minutes, and at no point in time have I made any mention of sexuality, sexual orientation, and let me just put it for those who don't understand what sexual orientation is, homosexuality when it comes down to male sex abuse. There's this huge myth that there's a direct correlation between male sex abuse and homosexuality. And I'm going to look directly into the camera. There's none. I've been doing this research for way over 10 years. And I've done the groundwork, I've read the book, I've done enough work, and to this day, there has not been any book, any data, any research, any studies that I can find to this day that can pinpoint and say that there's a direct correlation between male sex abuse and sexuality. Bear in mind, over 80% of men who are perpetrators of male sex abuse identify as heterosexual. And it's all about power and control. It has nothing to do with sex. Even when it comes down to male to female sex abuse, it has everything to do with power and control. And also have that knowledge that there are women also who sex abuse boys. It's just that from a cultural standpoint, we tend not to want to frown on the older female molesting the younger boy, because in a male-driven masculine society, we look at this male machismo that it is a rite of passage. It isn't a rite of passage when an older woman decides that she's going to take advantage of a young child. So this is it. We're at the end of our first 30-minute segment of our live chat, and we're going to have 7 more segments. I'm hoping to get a clinician to really come on board and have that one-on-one interactive conversation from a clinical perspective, because I think it's very important to really engage clinicians in this subject topic and how important it is for us to deal with our mental health, and really not only as a survivor, but how important it is as our family unit and as our social group to really have more engaging conversation on this subject topic. So for those who are on live on Instagram, you know for a fact that once it ends, this is it. Doesn't get saved or anything on Instagram. But for those who are on Facebook, it is going to be saved onto my Facebook. So you can actually go back and see it over and over again. I'm going to keep reposting it. And there's a live recording, so it is going to get edited, look all fancied up, and it is going to get posted on our website at obdn.org. And outside of that, if there's anyone who wants to make a donation or make any level of contribution to us, just go directly to the website. I'm going to say it again, it's obdn.org, and just click on the donation button. We will take $1, it doesn't really matter. And if you're trying to get more information on our live chat, you can get me directly at live chat at obdn.org, or you can send me a direct email at dtyson@obdn.org. You can go to the website and all the information is there. So it has been a pleasure, and Daddy, once again, thank you so much for doing this.
Good trip.
I know it took a whole lot, and don't feel no way. It took a lot out of me to ask you that I could do it, because I was like, shit, how is he gonna do this? And
Nervous wreck.
Hey, you speak much in the last night. So, for those who want to ask questions, you can directly send the messages on Instagram to me on the behind the scene photos that we're gonna have, and on Facebook you can ask all the questions. I'm gonna try my best to answer them as much as we can, and I think we're gonna try and have a whole different format because this is new. We're trying, so we're gonna have an after chat. So for those who want to have that one-on-one conversation with us live and ask us questions, I'm gonna give you that option. But today is a short time, and I don't really want to burden Mr. Tyson down and questions. So, and in any case, it's not about the parents. I really want that dialogue to happen between the survivors and the conversation that they're going to have with me. So, yet again, thank you all so much for joining me live, and I'm looking forward for what's going to happen in the next 7 weeks. So, this is it.